advance. I should have. Trying to get some of the equipment uh, moved around a little bit. But we're going to cut you loose. We're glad you're with us. I'm going to take these phones off here and bring you right on. So please feel free to share with us. And we're all listening and anticipating what you're going to be sharing this morning. Welcome to another edition of Korn Fig.
Excellent. It's great once again to be invited.
Man.
Everyone's home and opportunity to consider the heavier, more weightier things in life. We have a lot of fluffy stuff that's upsetting people and devastating people, and they know nothing about what true disasters await mankind. Yep. We get overwhelmed by things that are small and trivial, and we need to make sure that we are a people of weight and substance in order to withstand the storms and to have, of course, the trusting bond between us and YHUH. That we form that special people that we need to be in this day and age. So I'm just grateful for this day. That, as we prepare for Shabbat, as we prepare for a holy Moed, sometimes we forget that every Shabbat is a Moed. It is an appointed time. Yep. Appointed for us to be there, appointed for us to be there for each other, to encourage each other with the word, that we are refined and we are made closer to who we need to be. And that's the perfecting process of sanctification. And we need to yield to the Ruach HaKodesh and to truly desire to be changed. There's a lot of reluctance and resistance out there. And what I had to share was something that is a form of encouragement that really shows that the ball is in our court to a certain degree on how we are to react to life, and not to overreact to life, to act purposefully and with intention, having the mind of Mashiach at the same time. So I wanted to look at a situation that happened in Torah, in the Tanakh, in the book of Samuel, the first book of Samuel, Samuel Echad, Shmuel Echad, chapter 30. We start. Look at this portion every so often to keep things in perspective. I'm just going to read the first 6 verses if I can. I'm reading a New King James variation that I kind of insert my own terminology in. So just let me know when should I just go right ahead?
Yes, please, absolutely.
Okay. Now it happened when David and his men came to Ziklag on the 3rd day that the Amalekites, the Amalekim, had invaded the south and Ziklag, attacked Ziklag and burned it with fire, and had taken captive the women and those who were there, from small to great. They did not kill anyone, but carried them away and went their way. So David and his men came to the city, and there it was, burning with fire. And his family was among those that were taken. So this is gut check time. I remember as a kid, trying to sleep, and then I would hear a fire engine. The Doppler effect, you hear it from a distance, then coming closer and closer, and then disappearing again. Now, on the one hand, you're grateful that it wasn't you in your home that was in trouble, but somebody was in trouble. So I was even as a small age, I was called to pray and to hope for people, because the problem is a lot of people just take the deep sigh of relief that it wasn't them, as long as it's not me, as long as my family's safe, and really have no deep concern for others. And so we need to modify that as the eternal YHUH is perfecting us. We are the people that we need to be. Continuing, it says, and their wives, their sons, their daughters had been taken captive. Then David and his men David's 2 wives, Wam and the Jezreelites, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite, had been taken. David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. So here we see that the stiff upper lip doesn't work here. There was great weeping, great travailing, great sorrow. I mean, so strong was their sorrow that they couldn't weep anymore. They lost the power. They were exhausted from weeping. And because David is the guy, the go-to guy, and this happened under his leadership, they're ready to stone him. How could you let this happen? We trusted in you. You were our boy. You're our guy. And yet this happened. How is that even possible? How is that even possible? And, there's things that are worse than death. And the fact that the families had been taken but not killed makes one think, well, what were they planning for? Sacrifices, torture, whatever else, or to assimilate into their people, which is just as evil. So David was at his low point here. What am I to do? How is this going to get any better? But the next verse says, David strengthened himself in Yudhevate, Yahuwah his Elohim. And the Hebrew is Vayit Chazek, and that's an important word I'm going to look at. David, Yahuwah Elohai. So David, he found strength in Yudhevate, in Yahuwah. So this is an important concept. When we're devastated, when we're overwhelmed, and this is definitely overwhelming territory because they're so exhausted from weeping, but he decides to make a stand right here and now. And I can speak in the present tense because my wife, Regina's been struggling and suffering with vertigo of late. She was advised to get an MRI, and the MRI showed something in the back of her head that could very well be an aneurysm ready to happen. So we've been praying and trusting that it's not anything serious to that extent. But at the same time, you prepare yourself for all contingencies. We're in this world. We're not of this world, but we are in this dying world. And sometimes we, as I can speak firsthand with the MS situation, we suffer from various things. So we've been trusting. And today she went for the follow-up visit, and they said it was nothing. So the great relief. And so we're just praising Yahuwah for his deliverance. And we need, even before we see the deliverance, though, we need to praise him. We need to lift him up and find strength in him. David finds his strength in him and encourages himself in him. And everything changes. As we continue the narrative, everything changes, because then what does he do? He inquires of Yahuwah. He pursues and recovers everything that had been lost because he had taken action, and he was no longer paralyzed with fear and with sadness, overwhelmed by the circumstances. Because again, he certainly could have been allowed a little thing to devastate him, but he strengthened himself. He gained strength, chazak. He gained strength, and sometimes we only bring ourselves down even further. We find ourselves in a predicament, and we make it worse. We fear the worst. Oh, my wife's got a pain in her head. This could be cancer. It could be a tumor. It could be malignant. It could be this. We make it worse. We invent things. We envision things. And this is also where I believe, in line with what you're teaching, is we open up the doors to demonic infestation that just encourages that type of thinking, that just encourages that type of defeatist position that we are completely helpless, and surely this is bigger than Elohim. That I'm just destined to suffer from this. But David finds what he was missing. He finds what he's missing, not just his family, but he finds what he was missing. He certainly was not a lack of courage, but he needed to strengthen himself. He needed to preach to himself. And that's an important thing that we need to understand, that if leaders and preachers and whatever are not around, you have to preach yourself. You have to encourage yourself. You need to have the wherewithal to act upon these circumstances and get on the road to recovery on your own. You need to make that step. We need to accept the circumstances, or rather refuse to accept the normal way of acquiescing to the extent of these circumstances. Recognize the enemy, recognize the situation, but then find your strength in Yahuwah. Find your strength in him, and you will, like a personal trainer, you're coaching and you're counseling yourself. You can't always find somebody to encourage you So you must find your own strength, and that's where the chazak comes in. I looked up that word, and the root of that word means to fasten upon, to seize, to be strong. But to find the strength in Yahuwah, the old saying, the old Latin saying, "Carpe diem," seize the day. We need to seize the day to make our weak faith stronger, to repair that which needs fixing. When our peace is gone, we need to fortify the gaps and the breaches in the wall. And the chazak also implies a certain level of stubbornness in a good way. Like we say, we shall not be moved. And that's the type of chazak that we need. I'm not going to allow this to devastate me. I'm going to deal with it. And this could even be a tragedy. This could even be something that we don't think that we can withstand or deal with. But Yahuwah will allow us to press on.
Man, that's exactly what we were talking about this before.
Yeah.
That when it comes to deliverance, we've got to strengthen ourselves in Yahuwah and ask Him to lead us to other men and women who follow Torah and not throw ourselves at the mercy of the church system. That's exactly what we're talking about. And David learned that sometimes you just got to keep healing and strengthening in-house.
Right. So that's why we need to that's why the scriptures were given for us as reminders, even as we are to be reminded of Him and He of us. We need to look at the accounts of the faithful and see how they dealt with these circumstances. And David needed to reestablish his place in the eyes of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, of the Yahuwah. He needed to prevail. He needed to be, another term for chazak is to behave valiantly. We need to be strong. We need to be powerful in combating these things, and not just think that we're weak and we're just going to fall and fail and be disappointed and devastated all over again. And so, as what happened with David, everyone looked at David. You failed us, so let's stone him. Let's find somebody else who can lead us more effectively. So what's the secret of the strengthening is to first recognize that He is El Gibor. He is the mighty one. He is heroic, valiant, Gibor. He's larger than the situations. He's larger, more powerful than anything. I remember the Veggie Tales when my kids were younger. There's a song, "God is bigger than the boogeyman." He is, and it just puts things in perspective. That whatever we think is a problem, we need to acknowledge. And some of our problems lie in the fact that we acknowledge that He is not bigger than our problems. We need to try things on our own first, and if all else fails, then we'll kind of crawl on our knees very sheepishly and expect the genie to come out of the bottle and give us our three wishes. We need to make sure that we take these things to Yahuwah first, that He strengthens Himself, and the chazak factor of strengthening ourselves or preaching and convincing ourselves, giving us like a coaching us to do what we need to do. He's coaching us to help us to move forward. I want to look at 1 Corinthians 9 as Shaul is talking about a similar kind of illustration. 1 Corinthians Echad, chapter 9. Again, I'm going to read from verse 24, so bear with me in my various translations here. This is Rav Shaul. "Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize?" And then he says, "But run in such a way that you may obtain it. As everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things." So again, if we're desiring to obtain the goal, the prize, then we need to be temperate in all things. So again, that means having our vessel clean, and that means the shadim, we need to address that. We need to address the situations in our life that are less than flattering to us as far as describing who we are. So to compete for the prize, we have to be temperate in all things, just like the person who's training for a track meet. Make sure that it isn't, overeat the night before. Make sure this and that. You don't want to weigh yourselves down. Okay, in all things. Now they do all of this in order to obtain a perishable crown, but we do it for an imperishable crown. Therefore, I run thus, not with uncertainty. So get that. He's not running haphazardly or without a plan or without everything we do, we need to have a sense of what we're doing and not just put one foot in front of another. That's why it's the Torah is our goal, in the sense that the Torah illuminates our path. What we see is light shed from Torah, so it is Torah that lines our path. Even as Messiah is the goal at which the Torah aims, as it says in Romans chapter 10. And as you know, the word Torah, instruction, the root of the word is yara, which means to hurl, to throw, or to pour like water. So we need to miss the mark. We need to make sure that we hit the goal, and the bullseye is Messiah. He's the goal at which the Torah aims. So as we follow the path, all paths lead eventually to Mashiach, either as savior or as judge. So ultimately, we need to make that certain. So we don't run with uncertainty. We don't run without a plan. And if you're running in the race, you got to have a good kick at the end, right? That's kick. A kick is described as, when the race is winding down, the guy who has that little extra burst of energy can just explode and take the rest of the field and win the race. So we got to plan things accordingly. And he says, "Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified or cast away." So I got to preach to myself. I got to make sure that the messages that I prepare, that I read, and whatever, how is it affecting me? Am I just preaching to the wind? Physician, heal thyself. We have to make sure that what we're doing, we're disciplining our body, bring it into subjection. And again, whether it's an addiction or whatever, we have to say enough. We have to make that decision. People have been trying to quit smoking or drinking for years, and they keep drifting back. That nagging addiction keeps gnawing at them. And again, I agree that this is mostly demonic activities that are going on behind the scenes in our heads that are convincing us that that's what we need. That's what's going to satisfy us. And that's why what happens with drugs is you just keep going for the stronger, more potent high, and wind up dead in a hotel room with a syringe in your arm somewhere. So we need to make sure that we're fighting with purpose and doing everything with purpose, not unskilled, but as one who is skilled, and one who is qualified for meat and no longer milk, even as the author of Hebrews, Hebrews 5, which he addresses the crew, chapter 5 of Ivrit, starting with 12. Are we dull of hearing? For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you, again, the first principles of the oracles of Elohim, and you have come to need milk and not solid food. For everyone who partakes only of milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. You could do a whole series of teachings on that alone. But solid food belongs to those who are of full age, mature, being perfected by the word, being sharpened, okay, of full age. That is those who by reason of use, in other words, we're not atrophying. It's by use, it is because it is of full age, of full experience. So by reason of those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. So it's a use it or lose it proposition. So if solid food is for us, and I have a little grandson who's starting to eat solid foods, eating bananas and things at 8 months. So we need to make sure that we are of full age, and by reason of use, have our senses exercised to discern. Because again, if you've never run a marathon before, you don't say I'm going to complete a marathon today without having any training, without having anything in preparation for this. Otherwise, you're going to fall flat on your face after 100 feet, or in my case, in less than that. Okay, so we have to train ourselves and discipline ourselves and preach to ourselves and be chazak, be stubborn about it. If you're on a diet, if you're in the process of breaking an addiction, you have to be stubborn. You have to put both feet firmly, plant them, and make your stand. Because that's what Shaul also preaches throughout many of his messages. You have to make a stand. You have to stand. Even the full armor of Elohim only works when we make our stand. But we don't have any armor on the back, right? It's all in the front, and we have the sword of the Spirit to go on the attack. We have the shield of faith to deflect the fiery darts of the enemy, and we'll be in good shape. We have the helmet of salvation. We have the mind of Mashiach, who is Yeshua, our salvation. Yahushua is our thinking, and that's what we have to do. We have to get that thinking into our heads, and that's why the covenant that we have in the Brit Chadashah is superior, because we have Mashiach. We can cry out to him to be our head, to put on the mind of Messiah, and in that way we focus. We think as he does, as he would. We walk as he does, and as he would, and it doesn't become this difficult transition, because it's a natural or supernatural transition, because we allow Elohim to take over, to control things, to use our character, to develop his character in us, so that we think like he thinks, and it's not a foreign, bizarre thing to do. If you're truly of him, if you're truly being strengthened and empowered by him, you're thinking and you're sharing the same perspective day by day, and you that's how we perfect ourselves. When the resurrection happens, our body will be glorified. But I believe that now is the training for our mind and our spirit right now, to develop the gifts of the Spirit now on this side of the event, the main event. So we need to minister to ourselves. And again, let's look at the meat. It says, if I'm going to have meat, what do I have to do? I have to prepare it. I have to look over it. And I speak as one who hasn't had meat in 40 years. I eat fish from time to time, but I'm basically a veggie. Because in order to eat meat, you have to first prepare it. You have to make sure that it's clean and it's not, you got to look at it, look at the marbling and what have you. You have to prepare it. You have to cook it. You have to season it. And then you have to attack it with a knife and a fork. You have to cut off bite-sized pieces, and you have to feed yourself. Nobody's going to feed you like little Liam, my grandson, is being fed with bananas. He's not going to attack a steak the same way. So milk, what is milk? If we're not attacking the meat, milk is basically feed me, give me milk. I don't have a way of, I'm not self-sufficient. I need to rely on you to feed me, to get me that milk. And so those who are of milk and not maturing are those who cannot rely upon their own tenacity to learn what we need to learn as life lessons, is insisting on somebody else to do it for you. Because as Steve Taylor said in one of his songs, we'd rather listen than to look for ourselves. When somebody preaches something from a sermon, we'd rather just listen. And if I'm called into account of this being erroneous, I'll say, well, I learned it from here. That's not good enough. It says the blind will lead the blind, and they'll both fall in the ditch. So there's no excuse. We have to check the word. We have to go that extra mile. Maybe look at a concordance, look up an interesting word like chazak, and go with it. Go for it. So rather than listen, we need to look for ourselves. We need to prove all things, test all things. So anytime I'm presenting, I can speak for myself. Anytime that I present something, and I know that you can always review it and look back, check these things that I say, and prove for yourself. This is not me. This is I'm just served. I'm like a short order cook. The food is there. The ingredients are there. The customers are hungry. You're going to get something good. So we need to encourage ourselves. The word, which is the meat, is available. So we need to counsel ourselves based on the word. We need to make sure that our sorrow can be turned around. We need to look at setbacks as potential setups for something great. I won't go into all the detail. I have a couple of other scriptures here. Maybe I'll truncate it a little bit. Nehemiah, the first chapter, Nehemiah.
And by the way, self-control is the key to keeping the enemy out, because that spiritual person needing a body wants to take control. So people talk about demons, but self-control in all areas is a key to protecting ourselves from those attacks being successful, which is a form of what you were sharing, encouraging and strengthening and getting radical in reliance on Yahuwah. Because if we have self-control, the enemy cannot enter those areas. The areas that he attacks, that he tempts, are the areas that He studies us in. He knows we don't have that self-control. So self-control is part of encouraging ourselves in Yahuwah. Yahuwah, give me authority, kingdom authority, and the strength to guard these gates where I lack self-control.
Man, that's exactly the point that I'm trying to drive home, is that we can't be passive. We have to be actively involved and participating in this life that we have and these situations that present themselves. We have to make sure that we're ready to cook. We're ready to cook with what we've been given, and prepare the meat appropriately, and be stubborn in refusing to acknowledge and succumb to these situations that can otherwise overwhelm us. Just briefly, in Nehemiah, the point I want to look there is the survivors that have left in the captivity. They're weeping because the condition of Jerusalem is awful, and so fasting and prayer goes up, and there's great distress for Nehemiah and Ezra.
What chapter are you at?
Well, I'm looking at verse 1, I'll go into it then. Verse 3 says, the survivors who are left in the captivity in the province are in general distress and reproach.
Bob, what chapter is that? Nehemiah what?
1. 1.
Okay, chapter 1. Okay.
Verse 3 says, the survivors who are left in the captivity in the province are there in great distress and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem is also broken down, and its gates are burned with fire. So it was when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned for many days. I was fasting and praying before Yahuwah of Elohim of heaven. So distress causes us to pray for strength to reinforce and to change the situation. Then I'm going to jump to chapter 2. Chapter 2, verse 17 says, you see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste, and its gates are burned with fire. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach. And I told him that the hand of my Elohim, which had been good upon me, is also upon the king, and also of the king's words that he had spoken to me. And so he said, let us rise up and build. And so they set their hands to do this good work. So they saw the situation, they knew what had to be done, and then they did it. They did a good work. La Tova, they did a good work. They accomplished that. They saw something wrong. It was depressing them, making them sad. So they did something about it. That's what we have to do. Otherwise, we just fade. We just fade away. We have to do something about these situations, thinking of them hopeless, and there's nothing we can do about it. There is. And again, the idea of strengthening himself is also in the second. I'm just going to go through a couple of different verses really quick. I want to. Second Chronicles 17:1. It talks about Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, who succeeds him as king, and he has strengthened himself against apostate Israel, against the northern tribes. So he strengthened himself in order to deal with that. Verse 3, now Yahuwah was with Jehoshaphat. Why? Because he walked in the former ways of his father David. And again, that's what halakha is. The proper use of that word, halakha, is the way to walk even as Messiah walked. You can't rely on walk with him if you don't know him, and walk in his ways if you don't know his ways. So in all these testings, we have to be sufficient, and we have to feed ourselves on the word and on the fellowship and on the positivity that the word gives us freely. So I want to look just at a couple of other portions here. Let's see. I'm going to look at some of the Psalms that David says with regards to this event here and similar events. I'm going to go to Psalm 42. Doing this really interesting study on the Psalms, the literary devices of the Psalms, the different types of Psalms, the parallelisms, and all these different things. And it's just amazing how detailed the Psalms are. You know, we often think the Psalms are a place to go for refuge against heavy study, but the Psalms are filled with such amazing detail and such intricacies that it's really amazingly beautiful.
Yeah, that's right.
Psalm 42, 1 through 6. As the deer pants for the water, brooks, so pants my soul for you, O Elohim. My soul thirsts for Elohim, for the living Elohim, El Chai. When shall I come and appear before Elohim? My tears have been my food day and night, while they continually say to me, where is your Elohim? In other words, I like to rub it in. But when I remember, Zachor, when I remember these things, I pour out my soul within me, for I used to go with the multitude. In other words, used to go with the support of the brethren. I remember, when I remember the times how I used to deal with these things successfully, because we're sort of strained because our depression sometimes causes us to isolate and not want to bother people, or if we have problems, sometimes among the brethren, we don't want to bring it up because we're afraid of being considered less than. Well, I never have those problems. I don't know why you're struggling with these things. I guess there must be something that you're involved in, or what you're doing. All the condemnation that so many within various communities of belief love to inflict, whether intentionally or not. And so as a result, many people don't want to discuss what's going on in their lives because they don't want to be minimized or in any way, exposed as being less than. Far from the truth. We need to be able to come to the brother has a problem, the sister has a problem with us saying what's on our heart, and it's on them, because this is what we should be doing. So again, continuing, when I remember these things, I pour out my soul within me, for I used to go with the multitude. I went with them to the house of Elohim. We turn a page here. With the voice of joy and praise, with a multitude that kept a pilgrim feast, a moed. So I used to go with joy and praise with the multitude, and they kept a pilgrim feast, a moed. And of course, to keep is the same word, shomer, to keep, to guard, to observe. Okay? Why are you cast down, O my soul, he finally says, and why are you disquieted within me? He's asking this because he's been depressed, and now he's remembering how things used to be when his life was in better shape. But he's allowed this thing to rob his peace, and now he's isolated in a dry and barren wilderness. But he remembers what he used to do with the brethren, going up and making aliyah, to be in the presence of Yudhevave, Yahuwah, and keep and observe the pilgrim feast. So why are you disquieted within me? And he responds to himself. He preaches to himself. He encourages himself. He says, hope in Elohim, for I shall yet praise him for the help of his countenance, his face, his faces. Okay? Panim, verse 11. Why are you cast down, O my soul? He asks again, rhetorically. And why are you disquieted within me?
Bob, I'm sorry. Is that word there in the Hebrew panim, or how is that word read in verse 5? Just for my own reference. You just mentioned it.
I don't have my Hebrew handy. I could check that, but I don't have my Hebrew handy.
Panim, which is faces. So I'm just.
Yep.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. All right.
Why are you cast down? Again, he has the same question. Hope in Elohim, for I shall yet praise him, the help of my countenance, So the help of his countenance, now it's my countenance. So again, there's that link of the shared perspective, eye to eye, face to face. Okay, hope in Elohim, for I shall yet praise him, the help of my countenance and my Elohim. Okay? And it's repeated almost verbatim in 43, verse 5. But the term ma, tish, to, cha, chi. Why are you cast down? Why are you lowered? Ma, naf, she, my soul, the nefesh, my soul, my life, my breathing, existence. Ochili, put hope, le, lo, him, in Elohim. So we need to talk to ourselves, minister to ourselves, counsel stuff. Everyone, emphasizes that if you talk to yourself, you must be crazy and out of your mind, right? But in reality, we're encouraged to minister to ourselves. We're encouraged to take that tough piece of steak that might have been overcooked and it's like shoe leather, but we need to attack it with a knife and fork, make it into those bite-sized pieces, and it'll be all the more tasty.
So when man disappoints you and lets you down, like we had in the case so-called Christian deliverance ministry.
Yeah.
The answer is to reconnect with YHUH's faces. In other words, reconnect with him and remember all the times he came through for you and recommissioned you, because you know as an elder and as ministers, we face a lot of challenges, personal and in the ministry, and the answer is always to reconnect with your first love. And that's what David was doing after the defeat at Ziklag, as you were mentioning, and that's what we need to. And that's what happened with me. I was almost ready to give up on doing deliverance because I said, wait a second, these are the big names in deliverance, and I see a lot of phoniness and condemnation.
Yep.
But then I said, well, wait a second. Wait a second. The one who commissioned me is not a phony. The one who called me is not a phony. So it's a powerful word you're sharing today. Very, very powerful. It's exactly what I need. I don't know if anybody else needs this, but I need it.
I think we all do. And like I said, I'm experiencing this week fear, genuine fear about my wife's health. Again, with regards to reconnecting, that's all part of that zachor. We need to remember how good he is. Remember because in the day of his return, he's going to remember us. He's going to remember the qualities that allowed us to shine, for him to take notice of us. I never knew you, or well done, my faithful servant. To be a faithful servant of somebody means that you know them. You know their every move. You know what makes them happy. You want to please them. So if you're a faithful servant of someone, they're going to know who you are. They're going to know your name. They're going to know everything about you. But I was going to comment that this individual that you were talking about, that you visited, shows a really poor sense of discernment, or on his part. Yeah. The spirit that is in him did not recognize the power of the spirit that's within Mariamne, because she would not have it. And she went there for the purpose of receiving this, and she eventually got it.
Yes.
She's tenacious. That's that stubbornness. Yes. That says, "Oh, I guess we're done. I guess we're done. I guess I'm going to go back and leave in defeat." No.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Bob, because her stubbornness, which is exactly what we all need when we know that righteousness has been placed in our heart, or healing. In other words, if it was up to her, honestly, we would have been stuck in Atlanta for a week, because she was not going anywhere. It was costing me $80 a night. She basically told me, we're not going anywhere. I'm not leaving town until I get delivered. It's exactly what you were talking about, man. Right on. This teaching is a blessing. Keep going.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. The spirit within him was unable to discern the chazak quality of the spirit in her. Wanted something that would make her closer and drive her closer to Yahuwah. He wanted a spirit of superiority where he could dish out opinions and rulings and become his own little fiefdom in his little ministry, whereas Mariamne had a sincere desire to pursue with a specific purpose. If not you, it's not anything about him. Regardless of his big name or his small name, it wasn't about him at all. It was about the ability to connect and to help eliminate these concerns, and that was not within his capacity anyway. So she went to the right source and eventually blessed, as you had told me, the details of that. I just say Baruch Hashem. Everything just kind of worked itself out, but there's residual damage to a certain degree, because now you second guess all these. But that's a good thing. We need to second guess these people and second guess these ministries. Oh, I really thought that they were this. You know what? We need to have our dreams, our dream world evaporate into reality sometimes, because ultimately, when it comes down to it, Yahuwah is the one that we look to, and we can disappoint, as you had said. We can potentially disappoint each other, but he will never disappoint. He will never fail us. Part of that thing is again, when we counsel ourselves, minister to ourselves, and when we're about to lose our temper, and we're about to lose our shalom, we resist. We let it pass. We we quiet ourselves. See, a lot of people think of a passive existence with Yahuwah, and that's false. That's the spoiled baby that's still in the bassinet, barely able to contain the huge size of the individual, because it's a huge baby, a 250-pound baby that's just whining about being fed. Give me my milk, give me my milk. Instead of getting out of the bassinet and going in the kitchen and cooking up a steak, because he can't. He can only, he hasn't realized what his teeth were made for. So again, we need to, if we don't give in to temptations, temptations are always going to be there. The adversary knows them better than we do. We thought that we might have overcome a certain temptation. All of a sudden, we'll find ourselves, flipping the stations or the TV or whatever, and boom, wow, I hadn't thought of that in years.
Yeah, we hear strange groanings coming out of the TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, ay.
I thought I'd turn that page, but the adversary knows what page needs to be referred to again. Page 245, third paragraph, second sentence, and there you are. You're confronted with it. But we don't give in. We don't give in, because if we stop at the initiation point, what did Messiah do for us? He says, don't lust, because the lusting will lead to something. So if we nip it in the bud at the initiation point, if I get angry with you before I bludgeon you with a baseball bat, I gotta think about what I'm doing and why am I irrationally angry with you. Settle that. So at the initiation point is where all this happens. Well, before we get in the period of being depressed and withdrawn and fearful and almost, and it's devastating to us because we're almost in a fetal position. Some things are just so devastating to us, and we don't know where to turn, because I know that the brethren, this person is going to find out. And I know he's always been lording it over me. I know she's always had, and she never trusted me. She never really believed my testimony, whatever. So we're isolating ourselves, and that's horrible. That's why we, as mishpocha, we need to be observed as being loving, as being being highly favored, and being a person that people would want to approach with their issues rather than fearful of being condemned by us. So we need to walk in that attitude, and that's also stubborn. I refuse to appear, like, for instance, I can get really excited now, and with my wife, it was nothing. It could have been an aneurysm, which could kill her at any moment. So hey, what? We'll go. Let's order a couple pizzas. Let's get some. But at the same time, I need to work in the other direction with my food and with my diet and such. So we gotta temper things and not get over crazy in these things. So we have to, again, tempered. We have to be tempered.
Yeah.
So at the initiation point is the point of no return for a lot of people, because they proceed to follow the path that it leads to, which is full-blown sin, full-blown wickedness.
And that's what YHUH talked about when he said the kingdom of Yahuwah suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. Like you were saying, those who are steadfast, they're proactive. Okay, I'll give you an example. Something happened between you and your brother, and you can't sleep at night, and it's disturbing your peace, and you can't enjoy your food because you wish you weren't at odds with your brother, and it's affecting your life. Well, get off your ass, contact your brother, ask for a meeting, and do something about it, and the kingdom will rejoice. So, it's exactly what you're saying, and that's what YHUH reminded us. Passive people, laid back, who expect every kingdom blessing and victory to come to them, don't do well in the kingdom.
Oh, not at all. And again, we need to have this renewed, that chazak. It's got to also improve our confidence in Yahuwah as well. We need to know that he is the creator of infinity. Melech HaOlam is not just ruler of the universe. HaOlam implies beyond the vanishing point of reality. He's the master of all these things. He creates it all, he sustains it all, and he rules it all. And it's just amazing. So if we think that we have a circumstance or a situation that's beyond his reach, that's beyond his capacity to now empathize, because through Mashiach, he's come, so we can't say, oh, Elohim, you'll never know what I'm enduring. Well, wait a minute. Ben Elohim came down and dwelt among you and experienced all of your pangs and your pains. I know what you're going through. just like now you have to know what he's going through and have to experience the holy standard that he upheld without failing. So again, even if the ship is sinking, right? It's not going to sink. It's not going down because he is in it. He's going to stop that gale force wind. So even though we look at the circumstances and it's night and it's windy and the waves are lapping up high against, he's in the boat with us. He's in the boat with us. That's why Mashiach, we need to realize his reality in our lives much more than it is. So we need to bless the life that he has given us. He's given us the opportunity. He's given us the wherewithal to appreciate it and to grow and develop. That's the thing. We need to grow and we need to develop. It's not just a once little thing happens, a teary little altar call. And as I described it one of the weeks earlier, somebody said described it really well. It's like getting a flu shot. I went to the altar, I got my flu shot. I'm inoculated against any sin, anything bad, and I'm guaranteed a ticket on the train that's moving upwards. That's all I have to do is do this, and it's done. And not actively work out our salvation daily with fear and trembling, with the understanding we have to keep going. We have to keep moving. We have to encourage ourselves. We have to encourage each other. But don't be isolated, and don't let these circumstances get you down. Be tenacious, like Mariamne, and hang in there. I'm going to look at Psalm 103, which is really the last scripture I had to share, continuing this idea.
And then what we'll do is we'll take questions. I want you to keep going because this is a wonderful teaching, and I need it, and I'm so blessed because whenever we talk, I know we get busy sometime, and we don't get a chance to talk, but whenever we do talk, it's encouraging. And as you're turning to Psalm 103, the Ruach put in my heart. We read Isaiah 53 as a messianic prophecy. Oh, look, the Bible's true. 700 years before Mashiach came. Look at that. But you and I as ministers, and the Ruach just put that in my heart. What if we go back later today or whatever and read Isaiah 53, and we look at it from a ministry perspective? Okay. He was despised and rejected, yet he didn't give up on his calling. He was rejected by men, acquainted with grief. In other words, he was called to minister the good news. And men gave him all the things that we experience, rejection, grief. But he didn't give up. He didn't disobey the Abba's will, and he passed those tests. He was in all points tested, not tempted. He was not a human being who could be tempted with sin, and Yahweh doesn't tempt or tempts. But he passed the test, and the test was he was given a ministry like you and I were given, and he had every opportunity to quit. Think about that. I want you to think about that. I'm going to read Isaiah 53 just like the Ruach told me to, but this time not in terms of finding the Messiah, but instead of finding someone called to the ministry and how they were rejected by the men that he came to save.
Can I just interject one thing real quick? When we read Isaiah 53, we see Messiah, but we have to see ourselves also because we have to be like him, and we have to meet his standard. So if he was rejected, even as he told the Talmudim, look, they hated me first, but they're going to hate you also. So we have to look at ourselves, even as Paul, he dealt with the infidels in Corinth and in Rome. He had to assert himself and his legitimacy to be Shaliach, through his suffering. He said, wow, in 2 Corinthians, he talks about, too bad you guys are doing so well. If only we would have been doing as well as you guys, that you're ruling. If only we could rule with you. The sarcasm is about, and then he lists his credentials about being shipwrecked, about suffering, and enduring the hardship, but doing the work, enduring the hardship. That's Mashiach. So when we see Isaiah 53, we should see ourselves there. If you want to see what Yeshua looked like, and there's been all these documentaries on what does YHUH look like, whatever, look in the mirror. That's who he looks like. That is him and you are in him, and you need to walk as he walked. You need to think as he thinks. Don't think, well, that's for Elohim. No, that's his intention for you is to think as Elohim. The divine nature has been imparted in you, so you have to start thinking along these lines. As highfalutin as they sound, if you never considered these before, this is the standard. This is the standard that David was able to function under, and that's why he said to pull in the reins and say, wait a minute, I need to encourage myself. I need to reflect upon on these things before I go any further. At this initiation point, they can either fly off the handle, jump off a roof, and kill myself because I can't deal with this sorrow anymore, or I can pull up my socks and get on with the business of living. And I got people depending on me, and everyone who can hear my voice has somebody depending on them, even if it's yourself, even if it's a sick mother or whatever. We all have somebody depending on us. So we have to be tough. We have to be strong. We have to be tenacious, and we have to be conquerors. We have to be having that conquering mentality. And I just were you going to go into Isaiah 53 now?
No. No, not at all. I just wanted to encourage folks, basically talking to you, not to the listeners, as ministers of the gospel. You know, when we get discouraged or disappointed by men, we have to be careful not to associate the head of the body with the offenders in the body, and leave our calling and leave our anointing. You know, so like you were saying earlier, David could just as easily have said, well, you know, I'm just gonna give up on my kingship. So I'm just saying, when we get a chance, later today or tomorrow, let's read Isaiah 53, and like you said, we'll see ourselves there. No, I'm specifically talking about as people who are called to lead, because that's our calling, and the enemy is going to come against us with discouragement, and then if we're not careful, we'll start equating YHUH's people with Yahuwah, and that's a cardinal mistake. Okay, you cannot, as a leader or even as a sheep, you cannot do that, because you will get out of his will. As soon as you start equating the offenses of the body with the head of the body, you are about to jump out of his will, and we got to be very careful not to jump out of his will.
Oh, absolutely. We have to be tenacious. Can I just read one more portion real quick?
Yep, take your time. I'm not in a hurry.
Okay, Psalm 103. I want to read the first 5 verses there. Psalm 103, because this is the capstone to this message, again from the horse's mouth, from the sweet psalmist. Okay, Psalm 103, verses 1 through 5. Now this is important because it tells the troubled individual what to do and why. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to start. Bless Yahuwah, O my soul, and all that is within me. Again, everything within us, we need to bless his name. Bless him. And bless his holy name. Bless Yahuwah, O my soul, and forget not all of his benefits. And then he goes on to give examples of these benefits. So what follows is the Hine list. And I always refer to that. Hine is behold, and it is also something that you would hear in a courtroom. Here is the evidence. So when you say Hine, you know, are you feeling okay? Well, Hine, no, not so great. You see, I got bags under my eyes. I didn't sleep too well. Hine, look at the evidence of what I have to say, what I have to present is based upon fact. So when we bless him, we have Hine. We have, why do we bless him? And it's usually at the end of a clause like this. It says, forget not all his benefits. Then he lists them. It says, who forgives all your iniquities, all of them, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies, who satisfies your mouth with good things, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 30 tells us what good things he puts in our mouth. Primarily, Torah. You know, you're searching up to the heavens, or the far extremes, north, south, east, west. The Torah is in your mouth. It is in your, and it seeps in there. It tastes good to us. It's not bitter. It tastes good to us. And out of the abundance of our heart, we will speak from lips that have been circumcised by the word, and our mouth will be satisfied with the good things. You know, just like the book of Yaakov tells us, every good and perfect gift comes from what? The Father of lights, in whom there is no variation. There's no ups and downs, come see, come saw. It's all tov. It's all tov. Nothing is lo tov. Everything is good. So that's how we why we do it. What to do is to bless our soul with all that is within me. Bless His name. Everything that we have. So that means in our mouths. That's where it usually stops with a lot of people. As long as I talk a good game, that's all I got to do. But we got to walk the talk. Is that I'm not a big cliche guy, but walking the talk is an important idea. That we don't just say things, but that we do them. We don't just hear the word, we put them into practice. We don't just curse at evil, we overcome evil with good. So we have to be responsive, proactive people, not passive, not laying back and woe is me. Because David could very well have been in that position, and he was in that position, but he chose to take action. And everything is restored. Everything works out in the end for him. Everything was happened. And it's beautiful. So that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Again, the eagle soars, as Yeshayahu talks about the eagle, walk and not grow weary, will be renewed like the eagle and fly in the heights of the heavens, the Shemayim, which symbolized, the presence of Yahuwah, because what else was able to climb to those heights in the Hashemayim?
By the way, Bob, you know what the Hebrew word for eagles is?
What, evil?
No, the Hebrew word for eagle. You ready for this one?
Yeah.
Nasar. Similar to Nasarim.
Yeah.
Nazarenes. You could look it up. When I saw that, I just about fell out of my chair.
That's good. I needed that last week when I was talking about the Nazarim. And we're encouraged to be like the eagles. We fly above the problems. They fly above the storm clouds. They are the rulers of the air. Powerful creatures.
Can you believe that? I mean, I'm not saying it's the exact same word, but it's pronounced the same. Nasab. I mean, when I saw that, it just blew my mind. Because, like you said, all the metaphors that encourage us to walk and fly like eagles, and there it is. We are Nasarim and the eagles above, we are to be like the Nasarim above. Only Yahuwah could pull something like that off.
Absolutely. That's why this teaching that we've been doing on Wednesday night, our friend Herman Quinones is leading, talking about the various literary forms of the Psalms, and it's just fascinating that in addition to be prophetic, in addition to being beautiful, the poetry, the type of poetry in Hebrew is just amazing. All these little devices that are used, when you really break it down, it's phenomenal. It brings a greater appreciation of the word, that it's not just some ink thrown on paper. It's ruach. There's ruach captured for us on paper, and life and truth. Amen.
Okay, so we can open. You can share one or two more scriptures, but in the meantime, if you have them, if not, we're going to. If someone has a comment or a question from one of our listeners, we have our faithful group here, tune in all the time. I guess we're boring to the other folks, so I guess maybe they're looking for greener pastures, or I don't know. Maybe they're working, which is fine. But if you have a question, a quick comment for Elder Bob or myself, we'll entertain that. So, any final thoughts, Bob? Any closing thoughts?
Actually, it's somewhat unconnected, but this is something we were reading the book of Hebrews this week together, Regina and I. And I was looking at something in chapter 3. This is actually part of a bigger teaching, but I just wanted to share this one verse here.
Okay. By the way, William from Brazil says, I was watered today. I received water. He means living water.
Amen. Bless the name. That's the time of the Geshem, the pouring of the waters of blessings to enrich us and to aid in our growth. Okay, chapter 3. Let's start with verse 15. This is all in the midst of warnings about previous rebellions. It says, For while it said, Today, if you will hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. For who, having heard, rebelled? Indeed, was it not all those who came out of Egypt, led by Moshe? Now with whom was he angry 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, whose corpses fell in the wilderness? And to whom did he swear that they would not enter his rest? But to those who did not obey. So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. So I want to look at those last two verses here. We see the tie, and this is a form of parallelism, which we see in a lot of the Psalms and in Isaiah and various places, where you have the same idea expressed slightly differently, followed one after the other. Let's see. They will not enter his rest, but to those who would not obey, and those who would not enter in because of unbelief. So we see belief and obedience tied together in these two verses. And there's so many people misled who believe that obeying the mitzvot of Elohim are not living by faith. We have to have faith. Faith and obedience are two different things. And that whole lie of the adversary, in which law and grace are drawn behind clear lines, distinct lines, and the foolishness of that. So obedience and belief are essential to inherit the promises. And of course, this isn't talking about in history, but it's also inferring in the future that who will inherit the land, who will inherit the Sabbath rest for the people of Elohim. Who will receive this? Who will inherit this? But those who are of faith and of obedience. So,
Right.
again, just a quick point there.
Now we do, yes, Tov. Now we do have a question. Kingo says, "What is your opinion of the fake black Hebrews?" Okay, we've done a lot of teachings on that, Kingo. You could find it on our YouTube channel. One of the major, like 10, 15 parts were bloodline theology, or beware or be careful of bloodline theology. So you want to spend time looking at that. But basically, the overview is being Israel has nothing to do with skin color, white, black, yellow, red. It has to do with being like Isaac. Isaac was a physical human being who was also born of the Spirit, Deuteronomy 10:16, circumcised in heart. Okay, so if you're circumcised in flesh, if as a male, plus you're circumcised in heart, that's the main thing. Skin color is not a criteria for whether someone is pleasing to Yahuwah. The Black Israelite movement, it's good that they're following Torah, but it's bad that in the process of following Torah, they have the need to condemn everybody that doesn't look like them as Edom, white men, Jews, bankers, controlling the world. Okay, so the theology and the fruit that is produced is wickedness. It divides brothers. It is condemnation to those who are not lucky enough to be born with the right skin color or automatically classified as Edom. We reject the theology. We reject the doctrine of the Black Hebrew Israelites. But I am glad that they're studying Torah, but they're using, like Paul told Timothy, they're using Torah unlawfully to condemn rather than to build up in faith. And like Bob was saying, faith and obedience to Torah are echad. They're two sides of the same coin. I don't know if Bob is as familiar with the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, but if you'd like to, you feel free to comment on that.
Not too much. I think you pretty much covered it. But the point is that I'm saddened by the fact that people still, if you want to be like Elohim, if you want to be like Yahuwah, what does Yahuwah say? He says he's not a respecter of persons. There's no preference that he gives towards any individual simply because of what they look like or who they are. It's who they are inwardly. Man looks at the outward, he looks at the inward. So we all look the same. We're all the same color on the inside. So it's foolish to trivialize that. And of course, that particular racial expression came in response to, like the Klan and the Nazis, the Aryan movements. They're all claiming superiority. So we got to come up with some doctrinal position or proof that it's really us who are superior. So you have, foolishness on both sides. And even being drawn to Torah, if the Torah that they're being drawn to does not cause them to arrive at the correct conclusion, it's meaningless.
Right.
This is Shaul when he talks about Israel. Inward is the true Israelite is the one who is one inwardly. So, inwardly implies that they are lovers of mankind, not of people who look like them or wear the same clothing as them.
Right. The Black Israelite movement has become, what you were saying, a theological attempt for Black people to come out of the church, follow Torah, but bring vengeance and retribution on what the white man did to them. So last time I checked, vengeance is mine, saith Yahuwah. Last time I checked, just because you're white or Jewish doesn't make you a devil, okay? So they are trying to reverse an injustice of history by hate, not by love, and not trusting in Yahuwah being the venger, but taking vengeance themselves. That's the core of their problem. The core of the modern Black Hebrew Israelite movement is that they're taking vengeance themselves, and the word says, vengeance is mine for what the white man has done to you, I shall repay. So I hope that helps you, Kingu. All right, Elder Bob, so we've concluded another broadcast, and we praise Yah for your teaching today. It administered deep healing to me and to many others. So Yah willing, we'll see y'all again tomorrow for Shabbos, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Shalom, shalom.
And shalom, shalom.
Shalom. Okay, Bob.